Have you heard people say it's not faith, it's trust, full dependence on God? It sounds spiritual, but it is actually a very subtle and dangerous shift. Because the Bible never says you are saved by trust. It says you are saved by faith. Ephesians chapter 2:8 says, by grace you have been saved through faith. Hebrews 11:6 says, without faith it is impossible to please God. And 2 Corinthians 5:7 says, we walk by faith, not by sight. So what exactly is the difference? Faith is much bigger than trust. Faith is equal to belief plus trust plus action. Belief accepts God's words as true. Trust leans on His promises, and action steps forward in obedience. That's why Hebrews 11 repeats the same phrase again and again, by faith. By faith, Noah built an ark. By faith, Abraham left his homeland. By faith, Moses chose to suffer with God's people. Their faith wasn't just trust, it was belief and obedience in action. Trust, on the other hand, is one part of faith. Proverbs chapter 3 verse 5 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Trust is dependence. Trust involves relying on God during challenging times. But trust without faith is incomplete, because trust alone don't save you. It only rests on the foundation faith has already built. Let me give you an example. Imagine you are at the airport. Belief says, I know planes can fly. Faith says, I am buying the ticket and stepping onto the plane. And trust says, even when turbulence hits, I will sit calmly because I rely on the plane. Without faith, you would never get on board. Without trust, you would panic when the ride gets rough. Both matters, but salvation begins by faith. And this is why the subtle message of trust, not faith, is dangerous. When people hear it, they start asking themselves, am I trusting enough? Am I depending hard enough? The focus shifts inward to my effort. But true biblical faith points upward to Christ. So what is faith then, in simple words? Faith is taking God at His word, believing in His Son, Jesus Christ, trusting Him with your life, and stepping forward in obedience even when you don't see the outcome. Romans chapter 3 verse 22 says, this righteousness is given through faith in Jesus Christ to all who believe. So faith is God's gift. Faith is how we receive grace, and faith is what saves. So let us be crystal clear. Faith is the root, trust is the fruit. Faith is the parachute, trust is pulling the cord. Faith gets you into the boat. Trust keeps you calm when the storm hits. But without faith, you have nothing to trust in. And that's why the Bible declares, by grace you have been saved through faith, not through trust, not through your own dependence, through faith. Because trust alone will sink you, but faith can save you.